You may get to a point where you feel like you're holding on to an older identity, and it's not necessarily because it's a good fit for you or that it suits you, but just because it feels familiar. And really, part of growth is recognizing that and being able to let it go so that you can become somebody who fully aligns with the person you want to be. Now, this might look like thinking that you're not disciplined or that you're not athletic, or maybe that you're just not able to do certain things. And maybe that was true before, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true now. You might also be attached to old habits or routines. Maybe you like to sleep in late, but then there's also something that you would really like to do, like start an exercise routine or maybe meditate or read in the morning. So that's something that doesn't really align, because if you've always been somebody who sleeps in, but you're also finding that you don't have the time to do these things that you say you want to do, then that's not really in harmony. And you may need to let go of that older routine of sleeping late. And you might just continue to see yourself through the lens of the person you used to be. Maybe you had a label back in high school or college that has followed you all the way through, and you still continue to let that limit you. And that's just, it doesn't need to be that way. You can let that go and move on to a life that fully feels like you. It might be hard for you to let go of that identity or those old ways, and that's normal because familiarity feels comfortable and it feels normal, and it can be very difficult to step out of that comfort that you've had for a long time, even if it's something that's not really aligned to you. But just because you've been doing it for so long, it just feels like that's the way you're supposed to be living. Your identity can also often be tied to roles that you play within your life. So maybe motherhood, your career, your relationship with your parents as a daughter, friendships, things like that. And you might see yourself as all of those different things, but maybe your career changes, or maybe your children are getting older. I've talked about that a lot, where your role changes. And so if your identity doesn't sort of ebb and flow with that, then it can start to feel off and wrong. And so that's where you really need to take a look and decide, is this still aligned with who I am and what I want? And then make adjustments accordingly. And even if something no longer fits who you are, it really can still be difficult to let go, again, because of that familiarity, because you might have spent 10, 20, 30 plus years feeling like that is who you are, when now you may be a completely different person. So, the first step in letting go of that old identity is to identify what that identity has been and what you've been carrying. So, have you been telling yourself stories for years? For example, for me, for a long time, I told myself that I was somebody who didn't follow through on things. With my running, for a long time, I just didn't feel like I was a real runner. I've used the getting up early situation many times because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And for many, many years, I used to just say, this is just how I am. I'm not a morning person. But as it turns out, I actually am a morning person. I'm much more productive. I love to get my workouts done first thing in the morning. And when I changed that, it made a really big difference in my life and made room for so many things that I'm able to do now. But if I hadn't let that go and let that thinking go, then I would still be stuck sleeping late, not getting the things done that I want to do, probably not exercising regularly like I do, and my life would look completely different. It's very much aligned now to the person I want to be, and that's all because I let go of past beliefs. So I'd encourage you to look at those stories that you tell yourself and ask yourself, are they really true? Is this something that I could possibly change? Or is this just something that I've been stuck in for many, many years? And, you might be able to let that go. Now, the second step in this is to stop using the past as proof of who you are, because your past, things that you've done many years before, or even something you did last week, doesn't necessarily define who you are today. And so it's a matter of looking at those things and deciding, whether or not you can let them go so that you don't keep using your past to keep you stuck. What you've done in your past doesn't have to define your future. And you may have changed in ways that you haven't even fully acknowledged yet. And once you can start doing that, it might be easier to let go of some of those past things. But you don't need to keep collecting evidence for things that you have already outgrown. What's past is past. We have all made mistakes. We have all done stupid things and made stupid choices and maybe had some habits that didn't serve us well or that weren't healthy for us. But none of that has anything to do with who you are today or who you can become. So, the third step that I would encourage you to take is to let yourself evolve slowly. Remember that changes like this do not happen overnight and it doesn't have to be big changes. The way that you can kind of change and shape who you are and what your life looks like is by those action goals that I talk about all the time. Taking small, repeated actions over and over again, start building the habits that then become part of your identity. So, I'm somebody who runs. I run 3 times a week and I identify as a runner. Now, a year ago, I wasn't running at all. I was thinking about it sometimes and maybe I would like occasionally go out for a quick run, but it wasn't something regular. And so you see what I'm saying? Like I wasn't identifying myself as a runner because I hadn't built the habit yet. Once I built the habit, then I could say, hey, I'm a runner. I run a few times a week. I sign up for races. I'm doing the thing. The same thing happened when I let go of drinking alcohol. When I first stopped drinking, I would just say, like, oh, I'm not drinking right now, or, I've sworn off alcohol for a little while. But the longer I went, the more I started to identify as someone who doesn't drink. And now it just comes right out of my mouth. If people ask me if I want a glass of wine, I just say, oh, I don't drink. And that's it. It's not a big deal. But it took me a little while to get there because I had to prove to myself that that was who I was becoming. And now it's been over 4 years since I've had a drop of alcohol. And it's just part of who I am. It's part of my identity. And that's really, the big point is that it's the actions that come first. You have to build up the actions and the habits, and then that eventually becomes part of your identity. But you can't just go out and declare I'm this or I'm that without having the actions to back it up. That actually leads us into our fourth step, which is to build your identity through those actions. So there's no amount of thinking about something that is going to create a new identity for you. And I mean, I still do this a little bit too, where I'll think about, like right now for me, a big one is meditation because I used to meditate regularly and I haven't really been fitting it in for a while. And I keep thinking about it like, oh, I really should meditate. Oh, I could do it during my lunch hour. I could do it, after I get back from a run, but I just haven't done it. But see, I can't say that I'm a meditator just because I'm thinking about it. You need to take the action and follow through. And eventually I'll get there. Eventually I mean, this is just sort of how I operate. I think about things for a while, then I start putting it into action and then it becomes a part of me. And I personally don't see anything wrong with that because I feel like I have accomplished a lot. It just sometimes takes me a little bit longer to get there and that's okay. Maybe that's a story that I've been telling myself and maybe that's me looking to the past to, prove that that's who I am. But right now, I've tackled a lot recently. I don't drink anymore. I run regularly. I do a lot of exercising. I've recently adopted a plant-based eating lifestyle, and so I've been really focused on that and finding new recipes and things like that. So um, it's not like I need to add something different. It's just something that I know I would benefit from, and at some point I'll add it in. But again, it's the actions that you need to take before it becomes part of your identity, and that applies to anything. But the key here is that every time you show up differently, and the more that you do that and it compounds, that's when you start building that different identity. The final step to this is to allow yourself to want something different. I talked about this last week. If something in your life doesn't feel aligned, then it's time to either add something or subtract something so that you can kind of move into that life that you envision for yourself. But that's not going to happen if you don't let yourself dream a little bit and realize that just because you've been living a certain way, that doesn't mean that you have to always live that way. We all change. We're human. We evolve. We develop new interests. We maybe there was something that we used to enjoy doing that we don't enjoy doing anymore. But you have to be honest with yourself about that and determine whether or not it's something that aligns with your life or not. I think this is especially important in midlife because things are changing so much, right? Like our kids are getting older. We might be getting to a certain point in our career. There might be things that we put on hold because we were raising kids or because we had a family or because we were building our careers. And it might be something that was like kind of in the back of your head that you really wanted to do. And often, this is the time where we begin to make some space for that. And so, what is it that you want? And how can you incorporate it? And how can you create action goals around it so that you take action, do it over and over again, and then it does become part of your life and part of who you are? Now, I've given many examples from my own life, specifically my running, my fitness, my letting go of alcohol, some of my eating habits, things like that. But I think the thing that I probably changed the most and that aligns like most with who I want to be is that I let go of the pressure that I always used to put on myself. I've always been ambitious. I've always had projects that I've wanted to work on, but I've learned over probably the past couple of years that I don't need to do those things at the expense of my mental health, my physical health, my rest, my sleep, my time with my family. Those are all things that are much more important to me. And I feel like I've become more of a laid back person and, just somebody who, like, I can still get things done without putting that added pressure on myself, without feeling stressed out all the time or having that like nagging feeling when I do sit down to rest or maybe, watch a television show with my daughter or something. I don't have that nagging feeling that I should be doing something productive. And I did that to myself for a very, very long time. And of course, I still do have things that I need to get done. I have my workout schedule, I have work, I have this YouTube channel, and all of the pieces that go along with 250 and beyond. I've also recently started writing a blog about my kind of journey into becoming a plant-based eater. So there's like all these things that I do, but I do those because I enjoy them and I don't want them to become soul sucking. So I have designed sort of like a system and a plan that makes it manageable for me. The moment I start to feel like overwhelmed or like not good about some of these things, that's when I take a step back, reevaluate, and think about ways that I can maybe tweak my system, change my system, or maybe it's just an off week for me and I don't need to do anything, but it's just about being aware. But that's a thing that I have really changed for myself because I used to be like always on my phone, always like, hustling and trying to like make something happen. And I just don't feel the need to do that anymore. I don't feel the need to stress myself out. And that has been probably the biggest change that I've made over the past few years. And it has made such a difference in how I feel, how I show up, and I think just like my overall attitude towards things. So maybe this is resonating with you. I have seen many women who, feel like they're not able to change. They feel like it's too late or they're not the right type of person. And I'm here to tell you that those stories do not serve you. You really can become any type of person that you want. Now, I'm not saying that, you can decide today that you want to become a millionaire and then tomorrow you're going to be a millionaire. That's not what I'm saying, and obviously that's not how this works. But you can decide that you want to, maybe you want to become a painter. So you start painting. Maybe you take a class, maybe you just, watch some videos on YouTube. Maybe you just go to the art supply store and you buy the stuff that you need and you just start painting. And that's, I mean, however that looks for you is right. Whatever feels manageable and right for you is right for you. It's just a matter of figuring that out, figuring out what action goals you can build around that thing that you want to do and make sure that it's manageable so that you don't stress yourself out. But really, it's often those thoughts or those beliefs that, this is who I am and that can't change. And that's a lot of times what holds us back and what keeps us stuck in old identities, because we don't believe that we can move forward and move on from that. So, really, the easiest starting point for this is to determine, what doesn't fit anymore. What stories have you been telling yourself that maybe aren't really true? And then what are the things that you can either remove or add in that align more fully with who you are and what it is that you do want? In closing, I would say that this isn't a video encouraging you to become somebody completely different. What I'm really hoping that you take from this is that what you believe about yourself or things that happened in the past do not have to define where you're going now. You don't have to believe those stories anymore. You don't have to hold them up. And you certainly do not need to keep like reliving the past and like proving to yourself that that's who you are, because it's just simply not true anymore. And if you have aspirations or if you have things that you want to do, something that you did 20 years ago doesn't have any impact on that. You just need to learn how to let that go. I know that's easier said than done, but just like I said earlier, just do it gradually, like try to let go of that thinking, try to move in some new habits and really like be consistent with that. Give yourself a schedule with those action goals, give yourself like a set time and just give it a shot and build on it, and eventually that will become part of your identity. Now, if you enjoyed this video and it resonated with you, please make sure that you follow me for more content. I post videos every week as well as shorts a few times a week, all on these types of topics for women who are in midlife.